A good tattoo is for both people involved, the artist and the person getting it. It's about the emotional feelings and the spiritual feelings that go on between the artist and the person getting it. Growing up in Hawaii, many of my Filipino relatives had tattoos, and seeing a lot of tattoos, I guess I always knew as a small child that I would be tattooed, that's for sure. I'm just finishing up a big chest piece for Bob, a good friend of mine. He wanted to add to a piece that he had got last year from some friends from Borneo, so I put this piece on, and it's in my style that currently known as a contemporary tribal style, where I'm using imagery from the past, but, you know, basically creating a contemporary image.
Leo's signature mark is the tribal, but he has his own feeling on the tribal work, and the way he puts it on and the way he arranges it on your body is definitely known.
I like to describe my style as basically tribal style. It's a contemporary version of what's come before.
Leo is the best known tribal artist and is really responsible for the resurgence of tribal work in this country, and he's given a lot of credit for that by other artists.
I've been real fortunate that I was able to start my career under Don Ed Hardy. Once upon a time in America, people used to seriously think only people in prison had tattoos, and Ed really changed the overall look of the tattoo world by increasing the amount of artwork, really. In 1982, Ed Hardy wanted to put out a set of magazines called Tattoo Time. At that time, in '82, there wasn't very many tattoo publications out, so I was real enthusiastic about helping Ed with that project. The first issue was called New Tribalism, which of course he featured me quite a bit in that magazine. It was a huge boost to my career.
I first became aware of Leo's work in 1982. Ed Hardy's book had just come out, and that was my first exposure to what they were terming New Tribalism.
My interest in traditional tattoos, of course, was primarily from growing up as a child in Hawaii. But when I moved to San Francisco in the mid-'70s, I used to go to the library a lot, and most of what I could find was in old books. And in National Geographic magazine, there's a huge image base starting back from the early part of the 1900s on traditional tattooing.
He's done his homework, he's done research from traditional work around the world, particularly in the Polynesian area. He has tried to carry on many of the traditions of the past, thousands of years of tribal artwork.
I feel most cultures around the world have tattooed, and I'm very much inspired by ancient imagery, and that's what helped to bring me to where I am. Over the last 10 years, there's been a huge revitalization of various cultures, primarily in the Pacific, that has developed more of an interest in the traditional tattooing.
What made it stand out for me is that it broke away from a particular image, a literal image of, say, a butterfly or a dragon or an eagle or a snake. The strong graphic style, the base of it being connected to ancient arts, all of this was really brought me into it.
Primarily, I start by drawing the design on the person. That's always worked a lot better for me over the years. If I can create right on the canvas, it always seems to, quote-unquote, flow better. The design elements flow better, the actual piece. When we started this piece, I drew the design onto Bob. Since this is a symmetrical design, I drew half of it, traced it, stenciled it, and drew the other half. Is always how I do the real symmetrical work like this, because the one side, of course, had to match the others.
My first tattoo was probably, I would say 30 years ago, and it was a spur-of-the-moment thing. Had no idea of artwork involved with tattooing. I was able to get a very good piece from Leo, and it's been a very, very enjoyable experience, almost a hobby for me.
My wrist pieces started out, I have kanji that I first got for my grandmother. They're from the I Ching, Adversity and Grace. And then Keone Nunez put on the Niho Niho, which are the triangle forms down here, protection bracelets. And then a friend from Denmark did this piece. And in Tahiti, the Liu family iron. All 4 members did the piece on my other arm. And then I wanted them evened off so they look like a cohesive piece, and Leo topped them off for me.
But I'm known for basically freehanding the design onto the skin. And in that regard, I can always guarantee the client that they're never going to see another design like this.
I always wear a lot of bracelets, or I did wear a lot of bracelets, but with travel being what it is, taking off your jewelry and this and that, so these become my souvenirs and my bracelets that I can take anywhere.
I believe tattooing is an art form that definitely ties certain societies together by having the mark, basically. Traditionally and historically, tattooing was seen as either group identification or identification of status in society. Now it's considered more of an art than ever, but when you look historically, it's so vast. The vastness and the ancient quality is really, really what excites me in tattooing.